Cam and Baptiste had never seen a sky look that big. Louisiana stretched itself flat and endless, fields split by the thin line of highway. The clouds hung heavy and low, like they were thinking about raining but hadn't quite made up their mind yet. Inside the transport bus, the air smelled like sweat, fear, and old metal. Chains rattled every time the driver hit a bump. Men shifted in their seats, orange and brown cloth blending into one anxious blur. Cameron sat ramrod straight, wrists cuffed in front of him, shackles cold around his ankles. He tried to breathe slow and steadily, tried to pretend his heart wasn't punching his ribs from the inside. This is a mistake, he told himself. Mistakes can be fixed. He'd been saying that since the day the jury came back. Across the aisle, a man snorted. College boy looked like he about to pass out, somebody muttered. Cameron didn't turn his head. He kept his gaze on the world sliding by outside, on the green and brown and gray. If he looked at them, if he looked down at the chains, it would be real in a way he couldn't come back from. Angola. The word sat heavy in his throat. Louisiana State Penitentiary. The farm. A place built to break men who had already been broken. He could almost hear his father's voice. We're appealing. This is not the end, Cameron. Keep your head. The system works. The system had worked all right. For the girl who cried on the stand. For her father who knew the DA. For a jury that couldn't imagine a well-dressed Rio kid from an upstanding family being the one telling the truth. The bus turned. The road narrowed. And then he saw it. Fences. Towers. The wide-open stretch of fields dotted with tiny moving figures. Men in lines under the sun, stooped over rows of crops. The bus rolled through the gate. The sky, somehow, felt smaller. Malik Jones already knew the rhythm of this place. Heat on the back of his neck, dust in his throat, the weight of the hoe in his hands, the easy swing he'd learned to make so it didn't kill his shoulders by noon. He worked in a slow, steady line with the others, field stretching out on all sides. Guard on a horse riding the perimeter, shotgun resting casual across his lap. Pick it up, Jones, the guard called, not really mad, just reminding. Malik smirked without looking up. Yes, sir. He'd been in long enough to know which sirs he meant and which ones he didn't. Sweat slid down his spine under the faded shirt. Cicadas screamed in the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked and then went quiet. He kept his eyes on the dirt, but his mind stayed busy, counting days, counting favors, counting exits that weren't really exits. He wasn't supposed to be here either, not for this long. Accessory to armed robbery, that was the charge. His cousin Lamont had been the one with the gun. Malik had just been behind the wheel, heart racing, fingers drumming the steering wheel while he waited in the alley. Then sirens, then gunshots. Then Lamont's body on the pavement and a DA pointing at Malik like he'd pulled the trigger himself. The courts called it justice. Angola called it a sentence. Hey, someone shouted from the tower. Bus coming in. Heads lifted along the line. Even men who'd been here a decade still looked whenever new meat arrived. Nothing broke the monotony like fresh faces and fresh mistakes. Malik straightened, hand going to the small of his back to rub a knot out. He squinted past the rows, toward the distant gate where a white bus was backing up. He couldn't see much from here, just movement, a cluster of guards, flashes of orange and brown, as shackled bodies were herded off. Bet we get at least 2 crying tonight, the man next to him said. You know they always send some soft ones on the Friday bus. Malik grunted, not really interested. Then the wind shifted, bringing the smell of exhaust and something sharper. Nervous sweat, cheap cologne that hadn't quite washed off. And for a second, he did look. One of the new guys stood out from the rest, shoulders too stiff, like nobody had taught him how to bend. Light brown skin, neat hair that still had salon precision to it, even after county lockup. His jumpsuit hung different, like it had never seen a real day of work. Pretty boy. That was Malik's first thought. The second was, he ain't gonna last a week if somebody don't help him. The man scanned the yard like he was trying not to be obvious about it. His gaze snagged on Malik's line out in the field, caught on him like a hook. Their eyes met. It was quick. Blink and you miss it. But there was a jolt in it, a flash of something like fear, something like pride, layered over with a stubborn refusal to break. Malik smirked, just a little, before looking away. Yeah, he muttered under his breath, turning back to the dirt. Soft. But he kept thinking about those eyes. Intake was a blur of orders and humiliation. Strip, face the wall, arms out. They took Cameron's clothes, his watch, the tiny gold cross his mother had pressed into his palm the morning of sentencing. They shaved his hair closer, not quite a buzz, but enough to make him feel like he'd shed another layer of himself. The shower water came out lukewarm and hard. A dozen men crammed under metal spray heads, soap sliding across skin, eyes cutting sideways. Cameron kept his gaze high, but he could feel them looking at him the way sharks might look at something floating in their water. Look at this one. Hands like he ain't ever grip nothing but a pen. Betty from Baton Rouge. Nah, look how he talk. New Orleans. Betty cried tonight. Laughter, low and mean. Cameron swallowed. Soap slipped between his fingers. His heart was trying to climb up into his throat, but he kept his spine straight, his face blank. He was not going to give them the satisfaction. And then he felt it, a gaze that didn't slide past him, didn't poke or prod. At the far end of the row, under a separate shower head, stood the man from the yard. Dark skin glistening under the spray, muscles cut lean and sharp, a tattoo curling over one shoulder. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't saying anything at all. Just watching. Cameron's eyes met his for a heartbeat. Hot water, cool tile, and between them, something electric. Then, the man tilted his head like he'd seen enough, turned back under the water, and started washing soap off his chest with slow, steady hands. Cameron realized he'd been staring too long. He dropped his gaze, cheeks burning in a way that had nothing to do with the heat. By the time they marched him to his tier, exhaustion had settled into his bones. The kind that felt older than his 20-something years. It was all cinder block and echo, metal doors and shouted conversations. Inmate Baptiste, the guard barked. Tier C, you listen when they talk, or you're gonna have yourself a bad weekend. Cameron nodded, throat dry. They walked past cells, eyes following him. Voices called out. Fresh fish! Hey, pretty boy, you got a boyfriend yet? Let me hold you down, baby! Laughter bounced off the walls. Cameron stared straight ahead, heart pounding harder with every step. The guard stopped in front of an open cell near the middle of the tier. Bunk above Jones. He'll show you what's what. Jones! From inside the cell, a familiar voice answered, lazy and low. Yeah, CO? Cameron stepped through the threshold and saw him properly for the first time, without bars, without distance. Malik Jones sat on the lower bunk, back against the wall, one knee up. His eyes were dark and sharp, taking Cameron in like he was reading a file. Up close, Cameron could see the scar at Malik's jaw, the faint dimple that tried to show up when he smirked. The air felt a little thinner between them. The guard jerked his chin toward Cameron. You got a new roommate, Baptiste. Don't let him do nothing stupid first week. Warden don't like paperwork. The guard laughed like it was a joke. The keys jangled, Footsteps faded. Silence settled between them. Malik let his gaze travel from Cameron's face down to his hands, then back up. That smirk showed up for real this time, slow and a little dangerous. "So," he said, "they sent us a college boy." Cameron's spine stiffened. "I'm not." "You are," Malik cut in, amused. "I can hear it. You talk like my teachers did. Like you mad careful with every word so it don't get your mama in trouble at church." He shifted, swinging his legs to the floor, boots thudding softly. When he stood, he was close enough that Cameron could see the tiny flecks of lighter brown in his eyes. "What's your name again?" Malik asked. "Cameron Baptiste." "Oh, Baptiste," Malik repeated, rolling the syllables in his mouth like he was tasting them. "Creole, hun?" Cameron hesitated. "Yes, figures." Malik's gaze softened for just a second. "You look like you used to spend Sundays at your grandmama's house eating gumbo and pretending you ain't hearing grown folks' business." Something in Cameron's chest twisted. He swallowed. "You? From Baton Rouge?" That got him a real smile. "North Side. Jones." He tapped his own chest. Malik, the name fit him. Cameron realized he was staring again, realized the cell had gone quiet, the sounds from the tier muffled, like someone had turned down the volume on the rest of the world. Malik stepped closer, invading his space without actually touching him. Cameron could feel the heat coming off his body, the spice of cheap prison soap mixed with something warmer, undeniably Malik. "Let me tell you something, Baptiste." Malik's voice dropped, low enough that it wouldn't carry. "This place, it eat boys like you. Spits out what's left if you're lucky." Cameron forced himself not to back up. "I'm not a boy." "Nah," Malik said softly. "You just look like one right now." His gaze flickered over Cameron's face, lingered at his mouth for a fraction of a second that made Cameron's pulse stutter. Malik leaned in, his lips nearly brushing Cameron's ear, his breath warm against his skin. "You want to make it through this?" he murmured. "You watch, you listen. You don't talk unless you got to. And you don't trust nobody." Cameron swallowed, throat tight. "Nobody?" Malik pulled back just enough to meet his eyes again. Something sharp and unreadable flickered there. "Ain't saying I'm nobody," he said, smile tipping crooked. "But I ain't saying I'm your friend yet either." The noises from the tier crashed back. Shouts, laughter, a distant clang of metal on metal. The spell broke. Malik stepped away, dropping back onto his bunk. "Unpack your stuff, college boy. Lights out in an hour. You cry? Try to do it quiet. Sound carries." It was half tease, half warning. Cameron set his small state-issued bag on the upper bunk, fingers shaking more from adrenaline than fear now. "Don't worry, Baptiste," he said. "I'll keep an eye on you." There was a weight to the words that went past simple protection. Cameron felt it settle under his skin. He lay on his bed later in the dark, staring at the concrete above him. Underneath his bunk, he could hear Malik breathing, slow, steady. Cameron told himself he was counting ceiling cracks. He was absolutely not counting each rise and fall of Malik's chest, or replaying the way his breath had felt at his ear. He tried to think about legal strategies, about appeals, about how this was all going to be overturned any day now. But when sleep finally came, it brought him the sound of Malik's laughter, the heat of his body in that cramped little cell, and the echo of a promise that felt like a threat and a lifeline, all at once. "I'll keep an eye on you." In Angola, under that heavy Louisiana sky, Cameron wasn't sure whether that made him safer or more in danger than ever.